She cheated on me, so I sabotaged her condoms and planned my revenge. I found condoms in my wife's bag, condoms we never used. My heart sank. For hours I sat there staring at them, wondering who they were for, but instead of confronting her, I made a decision. A decision I'm not proud of. I made holes in them and waited. What happened next? You won't believe. We met in college. She was the kind of person who could light up a room with her energy. We were young and broke, but we had each other. I worked late nights, taking every extra shift I could so she could focus on her career. I even sold my car once to cover her tuition when she was struggling. It wasn't easy, but I believed in us. When she landed her dream job at a marketing firm, I felt like we'd finally made it. We bought a small house together, nothing fancy, but it was ours. I thought we were building something unbreakable. Sure, we had our struggles. Life isn't a fairy tale. There were times we argued about money, her long hours, or how she always seemed too busy. But I never doubted her. I never questioned her loyalty. The first sign was small, barely noticeable. I remember one evening, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie when her phone buzzed. Normally, we'd laugh at silly messages, but this time, she quickly grabbed her phone and walked into the other room. I told myself it was nothing, just work or a friend, but it felt off. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing more things. Her phone was always face down, even when we were eating dinner together. She'd lock it the second I walked into the room. She began staying late at the office, saying things like, "I need to finish up this report," or, "There's a last-minute meeting I have to attend." I wanted to believe her. After all, she'd worked hard to get where she was. But the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. Then came the late-night texts. I wasn't the type to snoop, but I couldn't ignore the constant buzzing from her phone in the middle of the night. It would go off over and over, but she'd just roll over and silence it without checking. I tried to be understanding, thinking maybe it was work stress or something urgent, but the constant secrecy made me uneasy. She had never been this closed off before. And when I asked her about it, she'd just shrug it off. "It's nothing," she'd say with that fake smile that never quite reached her eyes. I believed her, of course. After all, I loved her. But deep down, something wasn't right. But the real red flag came when she started going out more with friends. She'd never been a big socializer, but suddenly, she was meeting up every weekend. One Saturday night, she got all dressed up, and when I asked her where she was going, she just said, "Out with the girls, you wouldn't know them." I didn't press her. Maybe I should have, but I was tired, and I didn't want to argue. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I just kept thinking about her going out. Who were these friends? Why was she acting like this? I decided to wait for her to come home, and when she did, she was clearly drunk. The smell of alcohol was thick on her, and her eyes were a little too wide, too bright. She kissed me quickly, too quickly, and told me everything was fine. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Her actions, the secrecy, the late-night texts, it all started to add up. But I didn't have proof, just feelings. And sometimes, feelings are the hardest things to trust. The turning point came on a quiet Thursday afternoon. I had taken the day off work, something I rarely did, but something inside me told me I had to be there. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But I had to know. I was sitting in the living room when she stepped into the bathroom to shower. I don't know why, but I walked past her bag, which had been left open on the couch. Something about it felt like a magnet pulling me in. I wasn't looking for anything, but my eyes landed on a small box wedged underneath her wallet. It wasn't a prescription or something she'd normally keep in her purse. No, it was a box of condoms. I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach and my mind raced. Why were there condoms in her bag? We hadn't used condoms in years, since we had started trying for a baby. She knew I didn't like using them anymore, and I trusted her to be on birth control. The logical part of me said, maybe she bought them for a friend, or maybe they were old. But deep down I knew this wasn't an innocent mistake. My hands were shaking as I picked up the box. I turned it over, looking for any sign that it might be a mistake, but there was no explanation. It was a brand we'd never bought before. Then it hit me. There was only one reason why she'd have condoms in her bag, and it had nothing to do with me. It was for someone else. I heard her moving around in the bathroom, so I stuffed the box back into the bag and sat back down, trying to calm myself. My mind was spiraling, my thoughts clouded with anger, disbelief, and confusion. But I knew I had to find out more. I had to know the truth. I waited for her to finish in the shower. When she came out, she didn't notice I'd been near her bag. I could see that she was distracted, lost in her thoughts, as if something was eating away at her. It was almost as if she knew I was about to find out everything. I couldn't confront her right then, not yet. I needed to be sure, to have proof. I needed something that I could never question. That night, after she had gone to bed, I decided to look through her phone. It was a gamble, but I needed answers. I didn't feel good about it, but I was desperate. I told myself that if I found nothing, I could stop and pretend this was all just my imagination. But as soon as I unlocked her phone, I knew I couldn't back out now. I scrolled through her messages, expecting to find just casual conversations. But what I saw, my blood ran cold. There it was, a thread of messages with a man I'd never met. At first I thought maybe he was a colleague or someone she had worked with before, but then I saw something that made my stomach churn. One message read, "I can't wait to see you again tonight. I've missed you so much." My heart dropped, my breath caught in my throat. I tried to keep reading, but everything after that blurred. There were more. Messages about meeting up, about how they couldn't wait to be together again. The last one, "It's always so perfect when we're together. Don't worry, your husband will never know." I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. She had been seeing someone else, someone she was clearly in love with. And here I was, sitting next to her every day, thinking everything was fine. I was blindsided, betrayed. I didn't know what to feel: anger, shock, confusion. I wanted to scream, but I stayed still. I closed her phone and put it back exactly where it had been, trying to steady my breathing. But the damage was done. I knew the truth, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to do something. I couldn't just confront her and leave it at that. No, I needed to make sure she knew how it felt to be betrayed. I needed a plan, a cruel plan. The pain inside me was unbearable, but as time passed, something else started to take over. It wasn't just hurt anymore, it was rage. I wasn't just angry at her. I was angry at myself for being so blind, for trusting her, for loving her so much and allowing myself to be hurt this way. And in that rage, a plan started to form, a cruel plan. I remember the night the idea first hit me. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the box of condoms I had found in her bag days earlier. I kept turning them over in my hands, wondering how she could betray me like that. How could she lie to my face? I could feel this dark, twisted sense of justice building up inside me. I didn't want to just confront her. I didn't want to sit down and have some heart-to-heart where she apologized and promised it would never happen again. That wasn't enough for me. I wanted her to feel what I felt, to experience the same sense of betrayal, the same crushing humiliation. That's when I made my decision. I was going to get back at her in a way that would leave no room for her to lie, no way to deny the pain she had caused me. I knew she was still seeing him. I could tell by the late-night messages, the secrecy. And the worst part? She had no idea that I knew. She was still going about her life, pretending everything was fine. So I decided I'd let her keep thinking that. But instead of confronting her, I decided to make her face the consequences of her own choices. I wanted her to see the pain in her own actions. I went to the store and bought a pack of condoms, the same brand I'd found in her bag, the same ones that I knew she had used with him. But this time, I did something different. I carefully punctured each one with a needle. I made sure the holes were small, barely noticeable, but enough to cause an issue later. Enough to make her feel the same panic, the same uncertainty, the same betrayal that I had felt when I found out what she had been doing. It wasn't just about making her pay. It was about taking control of the situation. She thought she could do whatever she wanted without consequences, without me finding out, but I was going to make sure she felt the weight of it. I didn't tell her what I was doing. Instead, I put the condoms back in the drawer where I knew she'd find them. I watched her every move, waited for her to come across them, knowing that the moment she used them, she'd realize something was terribly wrong. The days dragged on as I waited. I could feel the tension building inside me, but I kept it under wraps. I didn't want her to know anything was amiss. I wanted her to fall into her own trap, to experience the consequences of her own betrayal without suspecting a thing. Then, a week later, it happened. I heard her gasp from the other room. I could feel the panic in her voice as she called my name. I walked into the bedroom, pretending to be concerned, but I could barely hide the satisfaction building up inside me. "Something's wrong with the condoms," she said, her face pale. "They didn't work. I don't know what happened." I watched her scramble, trying to figure out how to explain herself. Her mind was racing, and I could see the panic on her face as she realized what had just happened. I didn't say a word. I just stood there watching her. It felt like the world had stopped, and for the first time in weeks, I felt in control. She couldn't hide anymore. She couldn't pretend she was the person I thought she was. And the best part? She had no idea I was the one behind it. She had no idea that the very thing she thought was her safe escape had been the trap I'd set for her. She thought she had been smart, getting away with it all, but in that moment, she understood that everything she'd done had caught up with her. In that moment, as I stood there in the doorway, watching her struggle with the condoms, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't relief. It wasn't satisfaction, as I thought it would be. It was something darker, something more complicated. I wanted to feel like I had won, that I had taken back control, but instead I felt hollow. The truth was, no matter how much I had planned, no matter how much pain I had caused her, the damage had already been done. Her eyes widened, her voice trembling as she tried to make sense of it. I knew what she was thinking, how to explain away the mess she had created, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done, and she had no idea who had delivered it. I watched her squirm, trying to piece together an explanation, but deep down, I already knew. She could never undo what she had done to me. There was no apology that could make it right, no explanation that could heal the wound she had carved into my heart. In that silence, the weight of everything I'd been carrying for weeks, maybe even months, came crashing down on me. The anger, the betrayal, the humiliation, it all became too much to bear. For a second, I wondered if I had gone too far. Was this what I really wanted? Was this going to be enough to heal me, to give me closure? But then I remembered. There was no closure to be had. Not really. Because no matter how much I made her feel the pain I had gone through, she could never take back what she had done. She could never erase the fact that she had betrayed me, that she had turned our life together into a lie. And no matter how much I wanted her to feel the weight of it, it didn't change the truth. Everything I had known was gone. The person I had loved, trusted, and believed in, she didn't exist anymore. The person standing in front of me, scrambling to explain her actions, was a stranger. I could see the panic in her eyes, the desperation as she tried to come up with an explanation. She wanted to blame the brand, the store, anything but admit the truth. But she couldn't. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I didn't want to hear her apologies or her promises that it would never happen again. I wanted her to face the reality of what she had done. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't something that could just be swept under the rug. "I don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "What's happening? Why isn't this working?" I could hear the fear creeping in, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No desire to comfort her. The only thing I felt was the bitter taste of justice. I knew she was scared, and for the first time in a long time, I felt in control. But as the hours passed and the chaos of that moment settled, the weight of the emotional toll began to hit me. I realized that even though I had done this to make her feel the pain I had endured, it wasn't healing me. It wasn't fixing anything. It wasn't bringing back the trust, the love, the relationship we had built. All of that was gone. It was never coming back. I spent the next few days in a daze, unsure of what to do next. I had gotten my revenge, but it felt empty. There were moments when I thought I'd made a mistake, when I wondered if I could have confronted her differently, been more honest with myself. But the truth was, I didn't know how to deal with the betrayal anymore. I didn't know how to go back to being the person I once was. Every time I saw her after that, I couldn't shake the feeling of disgust. Not just at her, but at myself. Because no matter how much I wanted to believe I had regained some semblance of control, I had lost something far more important: my peace of mind, my sense of self. I couldn't look at her without seeing the lies, the fake smiles, the promises that meant nothing. And no matter how many times she apologized, it didn't matter. It wasn't the apology I needed. It was the trust that had been shattered, never to be rebuilt. I started pulling away. I stopped responding to her texts as quickly, stopped engaging in our usual conversations. I was distant, cold, and I could feel her trying harder to fix things, to make it right. But I wasn't interested anymore. I wasn't interested in the woman who had betrayed me. I wasn't interested in pretending that everything was okay when I felt like my world had been torn apart. The worst part was that I started to question everything. Myself, our relationship, my own worth. Had I been blind to the signs all along? Was I the fool for trusting her in the first place? The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with a deep, hollow sadness. I had given her everything, and in return, I had been broken. And no matter how much I tried to focus on the revenge, it didn't heal the emptiness inside me. In the end, I realized that the revenge, as satisfying as it had seemed at the time, didn't give me what I needed. It didn't give me closure. It didn't bring back the love. All it did was prolong the pain, keep me stuck in a cycle of anger and hurt that I couldn't escape. And as the days went on, I started to see that maybe the hardest part wasn't what she had done. It was the fact that I had let it happen. I had let myself be so consumed by the desire for revenge that I had lost sight of the person I used to be. It's been months since that night. The night everything changed. The night I finally let her see the consequences of her betrayal. But now, as I sit here and reflect on everything that happened, I realize something. Revenge didn't give me what I thought it would. It didn't fill the hole that had been left inside me. If anything, it deepened the wound. In the beginning, I thought that getting back at her would restore some sense of balance, some sense of justice. But it didn't. It only kept me stuck in a cycle of anger and resentment. I was holding on to this pain like it was the only thing that defined me. It was like I needed the anger to keep me going. But what I didn't realize was that holding on to it was preventing me from healing. The truth is, there's no such thing as perfect revenge. It doesn't fix what's broken. It doesn't take away the hurt. All it does is create more pain, more chaos, more confusion. And for what? To make her feel the way I felt for a moment? To have her realize what she did? That wasn't going to erase the damage she had caused. No, it just kept us both in the same toxic space. So here I am, trying to move on, trying to piece myself back together. But I've learned some valuable lessons along the way. The first one being, I can't let someone else's actions dictate my life. I can't let the betrayal of one person shape who I am. Yes, I loved her. Yes, I trusted her. But no one, no matter how close they are, should have the power to destroy my peace of mind. I also learned that closure doesn't come from revenge. It doesn't come from making the other person feel the pain you've felt. Closure comes from within. It comes from learning to forgive yourself, to stop blaming yourself for what happened. Because at the end of the day, I was the one who allowed it to happen. I was the one who gave her the power over my emotions. And it's only when I stopped giving her that power that I began to feel free. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on what I want from life now. I don't want to be defined by what she did to me. I don't want my future to be chained to the past. The truth is, I'll never forget the betrayal, but I've learned that I can move forward despite it. The scars will always be there, but they don't have to control me. They don't have to define me. Looking back, I can't say I regret everything I did. At the time, it felt like the only way to get my power back. But now I see it for what it was, an attempt to fill a void with something that could never truly fix what was broken. And for that reason, I know I'll never make that mistake again. Revenge might feel good in the moment, but it's never the solution. And that's the hardest lesson I've learned. The true strength doesn't come from seeking vengeance. It comes from knowing when to let go, when to walk away, and when to choose yourself over someone who never deserved you in the first place. I've learned to respect myself more, to trust my instincts, and to walk away from people who don't value me. Because if I stay, I only allow them to keep hurting me, and I'm done with that. I deserve better than to be anyone's second choice or a pawn in their games, and so do you. I want to leave you with something to think about. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have taken the same path I did? Would you have sought revenge? Or would you have walked away earlier before things got this far? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts, your stories, your opinions. This journey has been tough, but I'm stronger now because of it. And I believe you can be too. If this story shocked you, if it made you rethink how far you'd go in a situation like this, hit that like button. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more jaw-dropping tales. Because no matter what, I'll keep telling the stories that need to be told, the ones that help us all learn, grow, and find strength in the face of pain. Thanks for listening, and remember, it's okay to walk away from people who don't value you. You are enough, and you deserve better.